Are you ready to stop fighting and start loving again? What if I told you that the key to connection and harmony in your marriage can be found at the intersection of law and compassion? I'm Shar, founder of Law for Love, the most special place in the legal system in Atlanta, where we use the power of law to promote love for healthier families, stronger communities, and love that transforms the world. Thank you for joining me for a conversation about the soundtrack of your contracts. I am your host, Shar, founder of Law for Love, the most special place in the legal system in Atlanta, right? And what is very encouraging, very powerful, and just super effective is when we begin to understand how law is always in operation in our lives, in every aspect of our lives. And as a contract attorney, primarily in the area of family law, in marriages, in building estate plans and legacies, most people are not aware that my work is 99% contract law in every discipline. And so these conversations around your contract soundtrack are intended to bring contract law awareness so that you can utilize this insight to navigate your relationships more intentionally and understand how to get in sync or in rhythm with harmony. And one of the very first places to start, the very, very first place, is concerning the rhythm of peace. Most people will tell you, if you ask the question, do you want peace in your life? Most people will answer yes. The challenge, though, is that for too many of us, we were never taught how do you get peace? How do you find peace? How do you take hold of peace, secure it? But many of us don't even know that peace is actually a form of weaponry in terms of fighting. And of course, with my legal background, one of the things that I had to come and learn to appreciate about myself and my own very unique fighting style is that it doesn't look like I'm fighting when I really am. And part of the reason why is because of my skill with respect to peace. And here's where I want to share a part of my personal journey with you, which is at the foundation of how I help people who are in relationship turmoil. So for those of you who don't know my story, I was the runaway bride in my marriage for the first 8 years. I looked forward to going to work Monday through Friday, where I had a very rewarding job. And the primary reward in my work was that my clients listened. People would call and ask for my advice. And even with the argumentative clients, I was still heard and respected at work. But what ended up happening is that when Friday came and it was time to face a weekend at home with my husband, I would be in turmoil because I didn't feel heard, I did not feel respected, and I did not feel understood in my marriage. I'm able to articulate that now that I'm beyond the point, the runaway bride season of my marriage. But during that season, every Friday without fail, I would get into my car and picture myself throwing my phone out the window and me driving off into the sunset. Like, the only escape from my painful marriage that I could dream up was this scene of myself driving off into the sunset and my husband not even being able to find me. I was tormented. I had no peace. And over the course of time, and of course with some help, I didn't do it all alone. I had a team, and I talk a lot about my dream team in my first book, Trauma Transformation. How my team of pros, how my team of loving people helped me to figure out me. So when I say that contracts are the soundtrack of your life, I want you to imagine you and your partner as instruments in an orchestra, and you're each making different sounds. Flutes have a certain sound, saxophones have a certain sound, percussions have a certain sound. And the goal or the mission of an orchestra, which should be the same for your marriage or your intimate relationships, is to find a way to make all of those different sounds line up, to synchronize, to harmonize, right? So I found the peace rhythm during one particular season where I made a choice. I made a contract with myself. I made an agreement with myself. The old agreement was that I would not be happy in my marriage until my husband made some major changes, until my husband showed up with more empathy and my husband became less defensive. I was not going to be happy in the marriage. That was the deal that I made with myself, the decision, the choice, right? And I had to come to a point where I realized that agreement was not serving me. In fact, that agreement was actually creating more conflict for me because I had voted against my own peace, and I made my peace conditioned upon the behavior of another person. So I approached the ending of that chapter of my life as the runaway bride when I learned that peace began inside of me. Peace began with the place where I focused my attention, the thoughts that I had on autoplay, on repeat in my mind, and how to replace those thoughts with thoughts of peace, with thoughts of protection, with thoughts of love, with thoughts of acceptance. Thinking was the doorway to peace. And I marveled at how simple this was because I grew up in church. I've always been a student of the Bible. I love my Creator, and I'm on this journey to find Him and find myself and accomplish my reason for being on the earth. And I had never learned how to meditate. I had never been taught how to look at my thoughts. There's an incredible book that became my go-to resource during this stage of awareness of my life. It is called As a Man Thinks by the author's last name is Allen. Prolific wisdom and insight about the power of our thinking. And you've probably heard this 1,000 different times. You've probably heard it from hundreds of other people in motivation and inspiration, leadership and self-development And this is literally step one. From a contract perspective, you must begin with synchronizing with yourself. From a contract perspective, there cannot be inconsistency in an agreement, and that agreement lead to harmony. Anytime where there is an inconsistency, thinking back to the things that you say to yourself, the things that you are focusing on, the things that you are thinking that are driving your feelings. Out of your mouth, you say you want to be happy, but you have not seized the reins on your thinking to direct your thinking to line up with the things you're saying you want. You're thinking about all the things you are afraid of. You're thinking about all of the things that make you feel helpless. You're thinking about all of the ways that your husband or your wife makes you feel rejected, unloved, or abandoned, but you're saying you want peace. So my question to you is, can you see how your words are not in line with what you've been thinking? And can you see that the sound of your thinking, of your belief system, of the contract you have with your subconscious mind, your deep-seated beliefs, the sound of that contract, it's like someone coming into the middle of this beautiful love song and just start clanking on tin cans with a stick. It is not the sound of peace. And the reason why it is not the sound of peace is because we have to first align our thoughts with our words and align our behavior with our thoughts. And when we are aligned in our thinking, with our words, and with our actions, we have successfully created a peace deal with ourselves. Now, this is super duper important, and going back to the soundtrack of your contracts, right? Consider what you would look like on a dance floor. Some people, have you ever seen that person on the dance floor who is completely free and confident to dance all by themselves? That is the goal. That is what you look like when you have a peace contract. You are in rhythm with yourself and you are out on the dance floor of life, enjoying yourself. And your enjoyment does not depend on whether or not someone else is dancing with you. I want to really drive down on this point, because a lot of people who come into spaces like mine wanting to mediate, wanting to fix what's wrong in their marriage, they are so focused on their husband's behavior. They are so focused on their wife's behavior, and they have not recognized that they first need to be confident and at peace with dancing by themselves. I hope this is making sense, because when we get really good at dancing in rhythm with our own heartbeat and accepting ourselves for who we are, and shedding off all of the layers of what everyone else has put on us ever since we were little kids. Oh, you need to be this, you need to be that, you should be more like this person, you should be more like that person, why don't you do this, why don't you do that? Who are you? And how do you find peace and make peace with you? Because you will not be able to harmonize with anyone else before you make peace with yourself. And here's another story I tell a lot about, this conundrum I used to have I come from a family that my mother was born in a housing projects in Liberty City, Miami. Her family was poor working class. My grandmother, she was a domestic worker in Miami Beach, cleaning people's condos on the beach. And my mother grew up with 6 siblings in a small suburban Miami house when her parents saved up enough money to buy their home and move their family out of the projects. And this is where I come from. These are my roots. And my mother would become the first college graduate in our family, and I was a close second behind her because we ended up in college at the same time during a season of my young adulthood. And she finished the race, right? She was the first college graduate from our very poor family. And my husband, when we would get into fights, he would make this one particular statement whenever I would get loud. And getting loud or raising my voice, it was my trigger. It was my reaction to not feeling heard. So if you're not hearing me, maybe if I speak louder, like this is how a lot of people show up in their relationships, right? Well, if I'm not feeling heard, I'll just start yelling. And that used to be my response. And for years in our marriage, when I would get loud, my husband would call me ghetto. And it really hurt for him to say, look at you, you're being ghetto. And it was a statement that hurt. When I finally found out how to make peace with myself, I realized that the reason why it hurt was because I felt rejected as being the smart girl from the poor family. I was often in educational environments competing with children whose families had means and mine didn't. And so the word ghetto was a term of rejection. It was a term of shame. But it was a term that's a part of my family history. And I'll never forget the day that I accepted that for what it is. In fact, I used to be so angry with my mom that she gave me a middle name that is so obviously inner city Miami from the projects. Like Sharquise. This is where my name comes from. And one day, well, you know what, I'll tell you exactly how I got to the place where I embraced my name. But I looked at what hurt me so bad about my husband calling me ghetto. And I accepted that this is my history and this is who I am and this is who my people are. And that there's nothing to be ashamed of. And that he had no right to show up in our relationship with a word that was used to control me or to shut me up by triggering shame. And the very last time he used that word with me, y'all, and it's been a while. I want to say it's been about, it's had to be about 7 years at least, maybe longer, but it's been a while. When I got into the season of peace with myself, and we got into one of our old arguments, and he was like, look at you getting loud and being ghetto. I said to him, that's right, I'm ghetto and my name is Sharquise. Now what? when I stood 10 toes down and let him know that I would not be shamed into silence, that he would not volume police me by shaming me, that was the very last time he ever called me ghetto. And so the reason why I was able to show up with that confidence, the reason why I was able to establish and enforce a boundary in my relationship with my husband around the shame of growing up poor is because of my peace deal that I made with myself. And I want to encourage you, because each and every one of us, we have historical data in the background of our lives that we're not proud of. Historical data that's embarrassing, shameful, things that you will take to the grave with you potentially. You don't want anyone to ever know about you because they perceive you in a way that's totally different than that data. But yet and still, you haven't made peace with yourself. You haven't accepted or formed terms with yourself, and I call it I'm is who I'm is. When you have made a peace deal with yourself, when you have resolved I'm is who I'm is, when you cannot be guilted, shamed, you are no longer bound with regret or embarrassment or fear of rejection because of things that are in your past, because of the family you were born into, because of traits or characteristics you were born with. When you get to the place where you is who you is, where you make peace with yourself, when you align your thinking with the things you say you want and you act only in consistency with those thoughts and words, then you are in a peace deal with yourself. And then you are ready to dance with someone else because now you've practiced how to get on beat. I hope this makes sense. And yes, it's contract law. And yes, it's okay to dance by yourself because as long as you are in the rhythm of the beat of who you is, the rest of it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anyone else is thinking. It doesn't matter how anyone else is dancing. You don't have to be the best dancer on the dance floor to get your groove on. And if you want to groove, then the first contract in your soundtrack of life needs to be peace with me. And I'll call that single, you is who you is. Thank you for joining me here at Law for Love, the most special place in the legal system in Atlanta, where we use the power of law to promote love for stronger families, communities, and love that transforms the world. Thank you for joining me for this journey and for allowing me to be a part of yours. For more information, please visit lawforlove.com or follow us on social media at Law for Love ATL. I love you.